Shalom Aleichem, brothers and sisters, and Hag Sameach Hanukkah. Peace to you guys, and happy Hanukkah. Name's Wesley Scott, of course, talking to you here on Roots of Faith and on my personal page as well. I just hope everyone's having a great holiday season. I know for many of us, the celebrations are starting to wind down. We're getting ready to hit back real life, humdrum, everything that has kind of been picking up of just the regular day-to-day in and outs of life. Kind of just starting to weigh back in, as many people have probably already taken down many of their decorations. So if you went out there celebrating Christmas and everything, you probably either started boxing them up or you're getting ready to. We're less than a week away from New Year's, so hopefully all you guys are still doing good and finding, still some joy in the holiday spirit. Of course, a lot of us across the country were just getting kind of let down by, we build up we got Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, or Hanukkah, and everything just building up there, and we're just start getting all this anticipation, and then starts to collapse. But as we enter into a new year and a new decade, I kind of want to just challenge everyone with these ideas of, hey, let's take on a great spirit as we enter into a new year, new decade, new life, and just I want to take a look at the actual Hanukkah story. Now, this story you most likely won't find in most of your Bibles unless you come from a Catholic background. Up until about the late 1800s, it's sat in between the First and Second Covenant, New Testament, Old Testament. They're kind of just a historical understanding of what we were looking at. So many people, they weren't using it, so they cut it out. But the Hanukkah story is found in the first book of Maccabees. And my notes disappeared here. And many early Jewish sages, they found this book as important, but it's not godly inspired because there was no prophet at the time. You can see that in chapter 4, verse 46. And many church fathers, when they were creating the New Testament canon, they left it kind of on this is interesting information, it's valuable to know, but it's not given godly inspiration. The Roman Catholic Church to this day still has it as a canonized version in the Bible, so you can still find it there, or if I have a couple your Bibles that also include it either in between the New Testament, Old Testament, or my Septuagint also has it there as well. And I'm actually going to be using, for any of the quotes that I'm going to read from here, from the 1895 Revised Version. And just want to talk, because Hanukkah personally to me has just a lot of value. It was really where I started looking into the back of my Hebrew roots of my faith and everything, and understanding what the meaning of these festivals is. Most of the teachings I've done here have been on the feast, and that's because there's so much profit, there's so much importance that just enriches our understanding of the Bible and the plan that God unfolded for us just within these festivals. And so even though Hanukkah is not commanded by God as one of the major seven, it is a biblical holiday. We see it in the book of John with Jesus celebrating it and giving a Hanukkah sermon there in the temple. We see it so important in just that because of what Judah and his brothers did in fighting against the Greek dominant of the empire, saving the not only Jewish people, but also the faith and the importance of what God has preserved there through His commands, through His words. So I want to go ahead and just open up here in the first book of Maccabees and kind of just give you the big summary. The book is actually very long, lots of verses within each chapter. Each one's runs somewhere from 50 to 80 verses per chapter. So I'm going to try to summarize a lot of them. So when you open up the book of First Maccabees, you are given a big history lesson of the rise of the Greek Empire. So Alexander the Great set out to conquer the whole known world. He left out and he just started conquering this nation, this nation, this nation, and eventually he conquered the entire known world from Greece all the way to India. So as he was conquering, he became great, wealthy, but had no sons of his own. So at the end of his life, he had to give his inheritance of his entire kingdom to somebody. So what he does is he gives it to his 4 generals. Now, each one of these generals took a division of the section of the empire, and one general in particular gave way to the Seleucid Empire. You can also see this amazing history play out there in the book of Daniel in chapters 7 and 8. Actually fully prophesied this. There's a history of when Alexander came to conquer Jerusalem. The scroll of Daniel was given to him, and he read and was so impressed by the prophecy of what would happen to his empire that he left Jerusalem in peace. Before you even start reading the book of Maccabees, I definitely recommend reading the book of Daniel. It's going to give you a whole historical background of exactly what has happened up to chapter 1. Chapter 1 is going to kind of summarize that a little bit more, and then it's going to break down and kind of show you exactly some of the things that have happened and who and what happens when people just kind of stop caring about what they believe and go with what feels good to them. So Antiochus Epiphanes reigned, bringing success and wealth that looked great to everyone. His empire stretched far greater than all the other 4 generals, and in fact he started conquering other kingdoms of Greece of the 4 general sections. Spent much time going through and warring with the Egyptians down there. And so I'm going to pick up here in chapter 1, verses 11 and 13 through 15 of First Maccabees, in which it says, "In those days came there forth out of Israel transgressors of the law, and persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the Gentiles that are round about us. For since we were parted from them, many evils have befallen us. And certain of the people were forward herein, and went to the king, and he gave them license to do after all the ordinances of the Gentiles. And they built a place of exercise in Jerusalem, according to the laws of the Gentiles. And they made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the Gentiles, and sold themselves to do evil." So here we see this powerful king offering sanctuary and peace, but as always, such things come with a price, of course. Who really cares about the price of compromise? So often in our day-to-day lives, we just kind of think, oh, well, this doesn't really mean anything. If I give a little here, I compromise a little bit here on what I believe, whatever kind of makes it easy for me to just do what I want, and everything works out in the end. So what is the problem? Well, just as history shows, kingdoms don't crumble in a day. And families don't disappear overnight. It all happens with a slow fade, of course. Many of us familiar with the Casting Crowns song there. It's a slow fade there. So I'm just going to read on a little bit. And he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and with elephants and with horsemen and with a great navy. And he made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. And Ptolemy was put to shame before him, and he fled. And many fell wounded to death. And they got possession of the strong cities in the land of Egypt. And he took the spoils of Egypt. And Antiochus, after he had smitten Egypt, returned in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. He entered presumptuously into the sanctuary, and took the golden altar, and the candlestick, and the light, and all that pertained thereto, and the table of showbread, and the cups to pour withal, and the bowls, and the golden censers, and the veil, and the crowns, and the adorning gold which was on the face of the temple, and he scaled it all off. And he took the silver and the gold and the precious vessels, and he took hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken them all, he went away into his own land. And he made a great slaughter, and spake very presumptuously. And there came great mourning upon Israel in every place where they were. And the rulers and elders groaned, and the virgins and young men were made feeble. And the beauty of the woman was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation. She that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. And the land moved from the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was clothed with shame. And after 2 full years the king sent a chief collector of the tribute unto the cities of Judah. And he came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude. And he spake words of peace unto them in subtlety, and they gave him credence. And he fell upon the city suddenly, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people out of Israel. And he took the spoils of the city, and set it on fire, and pulled down the houses thereof, and the walls thereof on every side. And they led captive the women and the children, and the cattle, and they took in the possession. And they builded the city of David with a great strong wall, and the strong towers, and it became unto them a citadel. And they put therein a sinful nation, transgressors of the law, and they strengthened themselves herein. And they stored up arms and victuals and gatherings together of spoils of Jerusalem. They laid them up there, and they became a sore snare, and it became a place to lie in wait in and against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Israel continually. And they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled the sanctuary. And the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. And she became a habitation of strangers, and became strange to them, and were born in her, and her children forsook her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt. According to her glory, so was her dishonor multiplied, and her high estate was turned into mourning. And King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and that each should forsake his own laws. And all the nations agreed according to the word of the king. And many of Israel consented to his worship, and sacrificed to idols, and profaned the Sabbath. And the king sent letters by the hand of messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow laws strange to the land, and should forbid the whole burnt offering and sacrifice and drink offerings in the sanctuary, and should profane the Sabbaths and feasts, and pollute the sanctuary and them that were holy, that they should build altars and temples and shrines for idols, and should sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should leave their sons uncircumcised, that they should make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, so that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whoever shall not do according to the word of the king, he shall die. According to all these words wrote he to his whole kingdom. And he appointed overseers over all the people, he commanded the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. And from the people were gathered together unto them many, even one that had forsaken the law. And they did evil things in the land, and they made Israel to hide themselves in every place of refuge which they had. And on the 15th day of Kislev, in the 145th year, they builded an abomination of desolation upon the altar. And in the cities of Judah, on every side, they builded idol altars. And the doors of the houses in the streets they burnt incense, and they rent pieces of the books of the law which they found, and set them on fire. And wherever was found with any book of the covenant, and if any consented to the law, the king's sentence delivered him to death. So here we have this just dark picture of things happening, of people, leaving, and they've decided, hey, well, what could happen if we gave up, what our system of belief is, if we compromised on who we are as a people, and we let these other people with these beliefs, and we just gave them, oh, hey, nothing can happen. We'll do what you do, and you see what we do, and there's no difference really, and we're just gonna let you come on in, and then all of a sudden, oh well, we see you have much gold, you have much wealth. Well, we're gonna take it all. We're gonna make you be like us. We're more powerful than you, so now give over all your land to us and be just as I want you to be. You no longer have your faith, you have my faith, is what the Greeks told them. And so the Jewish people were forced to either follow in the way of the Greeks, who they thought, oh, well, we'll be like them, they had to completely either deny the Jewish faith or die. The book of 2 Maccabees is full of stories of people who would rather die than deny their faith. We see it all around the world here. My heart is often broken for the churches across the world who are under severe persecution in the closed countries, in China, and the Middle East, and communist countries in South America. We hear just the tragic stories. Books upon books are written about people who are tortured for Christ. And it's at this point where I often have to ask myself, what if I was in that position? Where does my faith stand? Am I someone who is willing to die and stand by what I believe? Or am I someone who is gonna go with the flow, go which way is easiest? Will I really hold, and is my faith that important to me that I'm truly ready to fall on my sword over it? So that's just one of the great things I've seen of throughout history that we can just apply across the world, of just these tragedies that were happening here, that we're reading, that we see across, and we need to keep all of our Christian brothers in deep prayer for that. So we're in, the darkest point of this story. Nothing good is happening. The whole country's been overrun by the adversary, Antiochus Epiphanes. He has gone, he's declared, if you don't be like me, you die. And everyone is falling either into place or into their graves. And, this is just the part of the story where, the pressure builds and creates diamonds. Heroes are born. The legends come out of issues like this. So, how can it get much worse? Well, skipping ahead to the second chapter, we find a man by the name of Matthias, a priest, a father, who is zealous for the Torah and will not compromise. When told to make an abominable sacrifice to the false deities of the Greeks, he refuses, killing another priest in the spirit of Phineas. And you're familiar with the story in the Hebrew Torah portion of Balak. The daughters of one neighboring country come in, they start intermarrying, doing cult prostitution across the land, and Phineas, one of the sons of Aaron, goes through and runs his spear through a man about to fornicate in the temple with a prostitute, and thus Yahweh gives the priesthood to his line forever. Well, much the same way, Matthias is not having it when this guy goes for trying to keep peace, to sacrifice an unclean animal on the altar of Yahweh towards Zeus. He runs him through with his sword, kills a few Greek guards, and then says, if you are with me, if you are zealous for the commands of God, come, we will not fall. So here's where we're going to stop here in the first portion. I'll be back tomorrow on Shabbat to talk about more of the story. But I just want to leave you with a few questions here. First, ask yourself, where do I find myself today? Where is my faith sitting? Am I someone who is, just kind of living my life by who I am, by, what's around me? Is my faith genuine? Or is it just because I grew up in a Christian home, because I, going to church is just something you do here in Eastern Shore, North America? It's just part of who I am? Or is it, actually who I am? Second question I want to ask is, as we embark into a new decade, where does my faith stand? It's kind of a continuation of what question 1 is about. Third, am I zealous or complacent? Am I on fire for God? Is my heart driven to bring heaven to earth? Or am I just kind of doing whatever I need for me, going with the flow? I go to work, I get my paycheck, I come home, and I binge watch something on Netflix. Where are my priorities? Are my priorities kingdom-based, or are they earthly gain, me? The holiday season has become infamous for commercialization, for, what can I get? Here's what you need to get. Your love is based on how much you can give someone else. These are just the things the unspoken things that is just kind of pushed through society to try and make you live out as someone who is, just a market of the corporate, who follows or falls into the place of, just trying to survive. For many people, it's the most stressful time of year. It's why it's the highest suicide rate is at this time, because of depression, because you can't fulfill your obligations, because you feel alone and lost. So are we hiding within ourselves, or are we reaching out to our fellow man? Can we say we really have peace on earth? That, the promise of the Messiah coming to us is being lived out through each and every one of our lives. And finally, what compromises have I let into my life that are pulling away from my faith and making me just as the world? Is there anything today that you have just kind of fallen into to just let you just not even see what is sinful anymore, or just, you've just compromised on what the Word of God says because you think, either I don't agree with it or whatever, it's not that important. So, these are just the questions I want to leave with you. And just as I close out with the Aaronic benediction, which Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, you will bless the Israelites, and you will say to them, Yahweh will bless you and keep you. Yahweh will make his face shine upon you, and Yahweh will lift up his face upon you and give you his perfect peace." Shalom, brothers and sisters, and have a blessed 6th night of Hanukkah.